Hello everybody, Nigel here with you. Almost said Nigel's modelling bench then. It's Nigel here with you, Nigel's Fiat 131 channel, whatever I called it. So here we are, this is the lovely Dottie. So if you haven't seen her before, here she is. She'll be 10 months old next week. And she is absolutely bloody wonderful, and she's having fun in the garage as well. The only trouble is she picks up absolutely everything. So I've got to be really careful what's on the floor. So yeah, I'm going to put her down and then we'll talk about this old girl here, the old bagger. So in my first video it was a quick introduction about where I was going, what I was going to do, what I was going to have to sell, and this, that and the other. The Mustang is now gone. That was collected on Monday, and that was bought by a lovely gentleman, car dealer up north. Yeah, and he also bought some of my tuning parts as well, so that was great. So sort of, you know, three birds killed in one stone, if you like. So yeah, this video is going to be basically giving you an intro about engine building. Now, a lot of what I talk about in these next few videos will cover any engine. There'll be certain issues specific to this engine. This is a 1367 twin cam, which is, I believe, not imported into the UK. This, if you don't know, this car was brought in from Italy. It came in on the 1st of June this year, so it's been here under a month, and I noticed an oil leak on the front of the engine. I thought and hoped it was a seal, because she's 43 years old and you can't expect seals to last that long. And on the clock it says 45 or 42,000 kilometers. I bought it assuming it was 142,000 kilometers, which is like 90,000 miles. I think it's done 42,000 kilometers. It's incredible, but I think it's done a lot of short journeys because the driver's seat is fairly worn on the side, but the pedal rubbers and the steering wheel aren't. So it's very strange. So yeah, what I'm saying is, you know, someone's been getting in and out of it a lot, but they haven't been using it a lot, and that there is absolutely no wear in the engine at all. I've mic'd the crank. The bearing clearances are all, which you'll see. I'll show you that with plastic gauge. The bores don't have a mark in them. You can still see the cross hatch. There is no wear whatsoever. I've stripped the oil pump, measured all the clearances in the oil pump. It's all within spec. So yeah, really pleased with it. So I think it probably has done 42,000 kilometers. I've had the head skimmed. Took it over to Newman yesterday and had that done. Well, took it over the day before and picked it up yesterday. Had that done. So I know the head's all nice and flat now. It did have about a 2/3 bow in it, and it was actually high on the front left corner where the oil leak was. So basically, cut a long story short, I took the head off thinking I'd have to replace the head gasket because the head gasket had gone, and you could actually see the head gasket actually blown apart where the oil way was. So obviously it wasn't pinching hard. The trouble is with these engines, they're bulletproof, but the head bolts are only 61 pounds-feet. The later engines, they did start to go for tighter, which was about 90 pounds-feet, ended up at, I think, from memory. But I don't want to go down the expensive head gaskets and bolts and everything for this one, for the later type, and I'm not even sure if they do the later head gasket for this engine. So anyway, so basically I took the head off because of the oil leak. Then I noticed I had bent valves, and sure enough the cam belt had jumped about 3 teeth on one gear and 2 teeth on the other, so that was a problem. And then got the head apart eventually to get the valves out, because obviously it's going to need doing. That took a hell of a lot of work. Then I noticed I had a valve spring that was actually bent. It preset itself like a banana. So new set of valve springs, wasn't it? Clearly, you know, like I say, it's 43 years old. So I've now got a new set of inlet valves on the way. Hopefully they'll come. They've been posted. I've got tracking for them and everything. So they're still in Italy. So we shall see. I've got the head gasket now, that came from Italy. I've bought a gasket set, full edging gasket set from the UK. So that's all good. You can buy a gasket set for a 1.6, the older engine, because it's got the smaller rear crank diameter. So you can get that gasket set and use it on this engine. You just can't use the head gasket. But all of the seals, all of the valve guide seals, all of the gaskets will fit. Basically the block is the same as a 2-litre block outwardly. The 2-litre block's probably taller. In fact, I know it is taller, it's got a longer stroke, and obviously it's got bigger bores. I think it's like a 1600 block with smaller bores, which probably makes it even stronger. So yeah, so basically we've got the whole engine apart to be rebuilt, and that's what I'm going to cover in these next few videos. Now, I've made a little cheat sheet with a few notes for myself about what I'm going to cover and what you really need to be really concentrating on. Number one in engine building is cleanliness. Absolute number one, okay? So it's no good stripping an engine, chucking all the bolts in a box, and then putting it all back together and just putting those bolts back in. They're going to have crud in the threads. They may well have corrosion in the threads. They may well have strip threads. You're going to have damaged washers. You might have really rusty bolts. You need to make sure everything is clean. I tend not to use taps and dies on castings and bolts. I tend to use new bolts or new nuts. So like on here I had a couple of water bolts, the bolts that go and hold the water housing on the front of the engine. They had some corrosion around the threads where they'd been meeting the gasket. So rather than put a die down them, I just put a new M6 nut down there just to clean the threads up. It won't cut any metal off, it'll just clean them up. That's my advice. If you start using taps and dies on worn stuff, you may find it will pick up and start to cut a fresh thread and you end up with no thread at all. Be very, very careful. Ask me how I know all this. But I've used dies on nuts before, and the die, where it meets some corrosion, the die is actually sort of dug in and started to go on an angle, and it just ruins the bolt. And if it's a special bolt, you know, if it's a step bolt or it's really long or something like that, you're knackered. You can't buy a replacement, so especially with old stuff like this. So yeah, cleanliness. What I would recommend, if you know you're going to rebuild your engine completely, okay, get up on an engine stand or on a trolley or something, get it all cleaned down with some engine cleaner, pressure wash it off, get all the dirt and crud off, get all the oil off as much as you can before you strip it down. That way you far lessen the risk of that dirt and crud getting inside. Same applies to a gearbox, carburetor, anything you're rebuilding, a rear axle. Clean it off first, get it clean, and then when you strip it down you won't get all the crud that's on the outside going in. And it's also much nicer to work with without all the caked on crap on it. So with this one, I didn't know I was going to be stripping it. So I actually took the head off while it was in the car, because I thought I was just doing the head gasket. And then when that was all off, I noticed there was some moisture around the back end, and I thought, right, it's 43 years old, I'm not going to rebuild this head and then have to take the engine out to do the rear crank seal, or indeed the gearbox. I don't like working under cars, so I would take the engine out if I had to do a clutch or a seal or something. I always take the engine out, not the gearbox. And often you have to take both out if it's front wheel drive. So yeah, I thought take the engine out, give it a clean, and you know, and go through everything, replace all the seals and check everything. So ironic, isn't it? I've sold the Mustang and I'm wearing an RTR t-shirt in the garage. Then once you've got your engine stripped, okay, well, there's a few tips to go before you got your engine stripped, but once you've got your engine stripped, I thoroughly recommend getting yourself a little paraffin tank. I've got one here, Clark's parts washer, you'll see it in a minute. Get yourself one of those and get all the parts cleaned. If it's dirty, get some clean paraffin in there. I use paraffin, you can use other stuff, but I always use paraffin, especially if you know you're going to be replacing all the seals. Be careful with paraffin with rubber if you're going to reuse things, because it will destroy them. Also get yourself some latex gloves, washing up gloves. I find paraffin destroyed all of them, but latex seems to last the longest. And I'm not about the thin ones, I'm on about the thick ones. And then clean everything, every single nut and bolt individually. Give it a brush, a scrub, a wire brush, whatever. Every single casting, all of your water jackets, everything, absolutely everything, clean it thoroughly. The engine block I went over with engine cleaner, then I pressure washed it off. It was a soap based engine cleaner, so it could go down the drain. I pressure washed it off. I've got a drain on my driveway, put over that, pressure washed it off, lovely and clean. Even did the inside. So you'll see the inside has come up lovely. It's really, really nice. I also want to say on this engine, I was absolutely gobsmacked. Every single nut, bolt, stud came out. Not one thing snapped, which is absolutely amazing. So then once you've got all your parts clean, get them all organised on a shelf, in a box, whatever. Everything's organised so you know where it's going. Pistons and crank I've put in the boot so they're protected from anything falling on them. If I should have to grind anything, they won't get sparks on them. You know, they're in there, they're protected in the boot. Okay, they're on a nice soft piece of car or a soft piece of foam, covered up. Well, the pistons aren't covered, but basically, I tend not to cover pistons because in the past, well, again, ask me how I know, lift the cloth up, catches the corner of a ring, ding, you snap the ring. So just be very careful. And then once everything is cleaned, okay, and it's all been done once, you've got everything done, you don't have to clean anything else, right? Then you can start your reassembly. And that's where I start to use then carb cleaner. I've got some here. I don't think it's that good, to be honest, but this one here, STP carb spray. So get that from Amazon. I bought a box of 6, which was the most economical way to get them, unless you bought like 24 or something, but I didn't need that many. So and now I will literally slather everything with that carb cleaner to give it a proper thorough clean and degrease before it goes back together. I will then use fresh engine oil. I'm going to use mineral oil in this. I'm not going to put synthetic oil in it because it's so old. I'm not sure if it's designed for synthetic oil, maybe the seals, I don't know. But I'm going to put mineral oil on it as it was designed to be. You'll think I'm absolutely crazy. The reason I'm rebuilding this engine is because I want to drive the car around for a few weeks before I strip it. So I'll have a fully rebuilt engine with a load of new parts in it that I'm probably going to put 500 miles on. So absolutely crazy, but these engines are worth a lot of money these days. So yeah, then once you've got everything done, individually, as you add parts, give them a good old slathering with the carb cleaner, freshly lubricate them, engine oil, assembly lube, whatever, and put everything together. And again, check all the bearings with plastic gauge, or if you've got the equipment you can measure and do some mathematics and all that. If you take the bearings out of the engine and they look like they have wear on them, don't be alarmed, because you have to remember there's, like this engine is specified on the main bearings, I think it's 2 thou to, what is it, 37 thousandths? No, 37 ten thousandths. So it's 20 ten thousandths to 37 ten thousandths. 2 thou to 3.5 thou, basically. And this one is 2 thou, it's right at the bottom end. So it's really, really nice. So don't go replacing bearings. If they've got polished areas on them, don't go replacing them, it's pointless, because those polished areas are from starting and everything, and it's just the general washing of the oil going around. If they've got scoring in them, you need to really investigate where the debris come from, where it's gone, where it is now, and then go from there. The other thing to talk about with cleanliness, which I'll show you in a minute, if you've had any machining work done, so if your block's been bored, your head's been skinned, your crank's been ground, absolutely thoroughly make sure it is really clean, okay? I had an experience once. I had a crank ground, okay? I didn't clean it. I was young and naive. I put it back in the engine and took 90 thou off the front of the #1 big end on the crank in 90 miles. It was a thou a mile. And that was because grinding debris had gone into the oil ways in the crank, and because of the centrifugal forces in the crank, the oil had sort of formed a sludge where it just sits there. The metal had gone into the sludge and just sat there, and then when the engine was freshly started with clean oil being pumped around, it washed the sludge out, or it washed the metal filings out, and it destroyed the engine. It wrecked every main, but #1, it took 90 thou off. I think there was also some sand in there from me sandblasting stuff. So don't ever sandblast aluminium castings for engines, because you can't get the grit out, okay? So there we are. So I've covered cleanliness, covered the recon work. If you've had the recon work, really be, I've cleaned that head, it's been pressure washed, it's been in the paraffin bath, everything. It's now been and had it skimmed, and I can see aluminium filings in it. So you don't want that going around your engine. Even though it's aluminium, it'll still damage the white metal in the bearings if it gets through. And it's just not good practice. We also have to remember that when we do these videos on this engine, you have to remember this is an old engine. And when I say old, I don't mean old as in it is old, it's an old design, okay? Things like this, the old A series, the B series, the crossflow, old engines, the old Land Rover engines, they're relatively easy to rebuild, and you will hear professionals, they say they go together well, or they don't go together well. One of the first engines that was a problem for engine builders, I remember back years ago, was the 1.4 engine in an Astra. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was called, Eco something or other or whatever, I don't know. But that engine was a 16 valve, and it was just troublesome. Once it was stripped and goes back together, it was never right again. Now a lot of people say that with the TDCI engines. You've got the 2 litres in the Raptors. You've got the 2.2 in the Land Rover and the Transit. You've got the 2.4 in the Land Rover and the Transit. I rebuilt my 2.4, it was absolutely fine. The problem with them is modern engines they just seem very, very cheap. Okay, for the start, the modern engines, they have open deck blocks where when you look inside, instead of having a full face which is machined, you have like an outer perimeter and then you have 4 bores sticking up, and it's done for cheapness, it's done for easier casting. Okay, this engine has holes front and back to get the sand out, and it's got what's called a closed deck, so it's got a complete metal face with holes in it for coolant and bolts to go in and everything. But you've got the tops of the bores are supported by the walls. With the modern engines now, with the open deck, even the GR Yaris, I don't know if you can see my Yaris out there, you've got the top of the bore, and it's just free to just wander around, and it's only the head pinching down that stops it. And if it does want to run around, what it does, it starts to fret on the gasket, head gasket goes. It's not an issue with, you know, standard engines, but when you start really tuning them, it becomes a problem. And a lot of people now are making plates for the GR Yaris that actually go in. They machine the block, they machine a step in the block, they machine diameters on the top of the bores, and then they make a plate that just goes in. I don't know if they press it in, if they bond it in or whatever. And then when it's all skimmed and the head goes on, it's all solid and the bores are supported, so you don't get this fretting problem. But it's common on many engines these days. The Focus RS was a big problem, if you remember. If you're going to build a Focus RS, you need a Focus ST block, because the ST block is closed deck, and then when they upped the power and made it 2.3, they left it as open, they made it open deck, which seems crazy. But I had a Focus RS, so I'm not slagging off other people's cars. I don't like the fact I bought a brand new car for £35,000 and within a year it was in the garage having a new head and head gasket because they fucked up at the factory. So there we go. You know, they developed a new head gasket for the extra power that the 2.3 Focus RS engine was going to make, and then didn't fit it. I mean, I'll never buy another Ford in my life, ever. Health and safety. Okay, health and safety. Remember, a lot of these chemicals you use in the cleaning chemicals and that, they're really, if they're not lethal, they're very bad for you. Paraffin in your skin, it'll just dry up and crack up. It's horrible. So you need gloves. What you can do is put loads of moisturizer on before you use it. You need to keep yourself protected. Protect your eyes. You'll often see I do things without putting goggles on because I wear glasses. I've worked in many engineering firms and worked with many health and safety guys. And a lot of health and safety guys I've worked with are happy with things like airlines, you know, the odd tiny little bit of turning or something. No eye protection because your glasses are good enough, really, you know, you hope. But the trouble is when you do, if you do wear glasses, you'll know that when you've got to start wearing goggles and masks and stuff, it's an absolute and utter pain in the butt. So, so there we go. So yeah, health and safety, be very careful, and obviously dress appropriately. I'm stood here now in a t-shirt and shorts, I've got bloody flip-flops on. You know, there's no way I'd start picking up engine parts because even a large bolt on the end of your toe is going to give you a few days pain, so just protect yourself. And then going back again, finally, nuts and bolts. As you take a bolt out, as you take, say you take the water pump off, lay the bolts out on the bench, measure them, make a note of them, put them in a box, label the box, box A, box B, box C. I use Chinese takeaway, or sorry to be Chinesist, takeaway containers. It could be Indian for all I know, or anything. They could be Mexican, they could be Thai. But they're containers, put them in there, mark them box A, make a note in your book, water pump, 4 times M6 by 21, 4 flat washers, 4 spring washers. And that way when you put it back together, you know you're putting everything back as it was. Don't just end up with a box of nuts and bolts, because I know, for example, because I've stripped this engine, there are M6 bolts in here at 16, 18 and 20 millimeters long. So you can imagine, you know, the difference is tiny, but it could be the difference between stripping a thread, bottoming a bolt out thinking it's tightened and it's not pulling down. You know, you think if the 16mm bolt has a 17mm deep hole, you put an 18mm or 18 or a 17mm deep thread, you put an 18mm bolt in there, you torque it down, you think, great, that's it, it's on the water pump, it's not quite pinching, and you get water leaks. So make sure you make good notes, it's worth doing. And I always sort of make a note if it's got copper washers, spring washers, flat washers, no washers, whatever, make a note of that. So you'll see all that in the next video I do when I show you actually, you know, all the practical stuff. At the moment I'm just at the stage where I'm still just cleaning the last few bits, so you know, in the next day or so, I'm going to be ready to start actually showing you some engine work. So there we go. So that's what's going to be happening. As I said in the first video, I'm going to do some book reviews as well, and maybe we'll look at some modelling stuff too. But those of you that don't know, this car is going to be going up to Rally Sport Development up in Malton, and it's going to be converted into a 2-door, and it's going to have Abarth body kit and Abarth suspension and everything. Well, I don't know what I'm doing engine suspension wise yet. It may end up having a Honda engine and gearbox in it, we don't know, but we shall see. I may even just use this engine. I may even just put some side drafts on this little 1400 because it's a lovely little engine, and even as it was, oil leak, knackered carburettor, well not knackered, but obviously all the seals are gone because it's just wet all the time. It ran like a dream. It really ran well. Started on the button, revved nicely and everything. Beautiful little engine. So may just keep this, we shall see. But it's not going to be a rear Fury with a body kit. It's going to be independent rear suspension, lightened, braced, everything. Okay, so don't think that. So there we go. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last video or not. Some of you may want to know why I'm working on this, not the Land Rover. As I said, I wanted to get a 131. I found this one in Italy, got it over here, and now I want to get the engine done. If I hadn't had the problem with the engine, I'd be driving it around and playing with it now, rather than playing with it in the garage. I'd be out playing with it driving. But unfortunately, with the engine the way it is, it had to be done. So, and if it's worth doing well, it's worth doing well. Why bodge it? So so that's why I'm working on this. As soon as this is running, I intend to get back onto the Land Rover so you guys can see that. There's hardly anything left to do, really. It's practically done. But as you will know, it got to the winter. I wanted to get all the bodywork back on it. We got all the bodywork back on. Then Jess wasn't well, and I was a little bit worried about her. And then she was diagnosed with cancer, and I just spent that year of my life was just gone. So and then, as you know, the next year after, which was last year, she had to be put to sleep. So I've spent sort of 2 years of my life really doing pretty much nothing, just making a few modelling videos. And at the moment, I'm not making many modelling videos because I'm out here all the bloody time, or I'm down the pub too much as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time, and I promise you the next video you see will be some practical on the bench work. And unfortunately you may see some sort of carrying camera stuff, which I know a lot of people don't like. I'm not the biggest fan, but sometimes the only way to show you around the workshop and show you the wash tank and the engine block and this, that and the other, and it's the only way to do it is to carry the camera, unless you do it loads and loads of clips and keep editing, and then you've got jump, you know. So anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. I'm going to bugger off inside and get this edited out for you, and I'll see you back in the next day or two, and we'll go from there. So please hit that like, please subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.